Hey, so it's been a while since I made any videos, and this one is going to be pretty low quality. I'm making this video on my phone, sitting on my bed with just like one little tiny lamp over here, so I've got a weird shadow going on, and just my earphones for a mic. So I hope that you'll forgive all of that. Also, it's long instead of wide, which I guess that's what the kids are doing. I'm so old. Anyway, there's a lot going on right now, and so I just kind of wanted to make a video about it. So right after I came out, my dad got sick with cancer and died very quickly. And now, 2.5 years later, my mom is pretty sick and probably won't last a whole lot longer. We might be talking days. On the other hand, the family joke is that my mom is a lich. Not a witch, a lich. This woman her heart has stopped 5 times in her life. She's had 5 near-death experiences. And 3 of those 5, she had experiences that she could, describe after the fact. 2 of them, she did not have any memory of what happened while her heart was stopped. So, she's 79 years old right now. And whereas a few years ago she said that she was not afraid of dying because she'd been there already and she knew it was, going to be fine. Now she has dementia and she doesn't remember much of anything. She's completely unaware of any of those experiences at all. And she's really scared. And dementia brings on a lot of fear because she has to trust the people around her, and she doesn't trust anybody at all. So just 2 months ago, we had to put her in assisted living in an emergency situation because she showed up at the ER in her small town with a plastic bag full of her medications in tears because she didn't know what to take. And for a couple of months leading up to this, her INR, which is like a measure of how fast your blood coagulates, was up and down and all over the place. And her doctor had warned her that she was at risk of dying if she did not take her medication properly. And my mom had enough sense to know that this was not good, but she really couldn't grasp what she was supposed to be doing anymore. My mom's dementia progression was hidden by the fact that she's really good at masking, and also hidden by the fact that in her whole life she wasn't entirely connected to reality. So if she remembered things differently than everybody else, that was pretty normal. But when she was in the hospital 2 months ago, and I went to her apartment, which is 2 hours north of here. So after driving up there and visiting her in the hospital and talking to the doctor, I was really hungry. I thought I'll just go get something at my mom's house. I opened up her refrigerator and I discovered a nightmare. She had 7 cartons of eggs and 6 cartons of milk, and the oldest eggs were from March. I think that the oldest milk was from April. I don't remember now, but I actually have photographs of all of the milk and eggs and cream cheese. Oh my God, so much cream cheese. What? Just what? and a few other random things that were in her refrigerator. It was so disgusting. It was the worst. And when I went back to her hospital room afterwards, and I was talking to her, and I was like, "Hey, there were a lot of cartons of milk and eggs in your refrigerator. What's up with that? And my mom said, I know. Somebody's been putting their groceries in my refrigerator, and I want to know who it is. So, yeah, that's where we are. So, clearly, she had to go into assisted living because, unfortunately, she could not live here. We're already 9 people living in a 4-bedroom house that is very, very crowded with people and stuff. You know, the youngest person in the house is 2.5, and I'm 51, so I'm the oldest person in the house. My mom would have had to live in the living room or something, and that just, no, that was not going to go well. Or she would have my bedroom, and I would be in the living room, which would also not go well. So yeah, there was basically no options there. And we lucked out. We did find really good assisted living home for her, which she hates just on the basis that it's not her apartment. And when that first happened, she got very, very angry at me personally because she thought that I was doing this to her to take all of her stuff. And this actually wasn't hard. This was terrible, but it wasn't hard. It was actually a huge relief for me. My mom, on the day that I was supposed to drive her from the hospital down here to the assisted living, she starts screaming in her hotel room at me about how terrible I am. And she says, "You're not my daughter. You're not even my son." And I had to work really hard not to crack up at that because, frankly, she's been nothing but a transphobe the whole time and really crappy to me about my transition. But then, like, publicly, she pretends to be all nice. And then here she was in public in her small town showing her true face, which was honestly quite a relief for me to have her just show her true face and me not to have to, like, sort of protect her, I guess, because I didn't want to ruin her reputation as a human being in a small town where there's less than 3,000 people in the whole town. Everybody knows everybody. Let her ruin her reputation herself. I don't need to say nasty things about my mom. But her just doing that, weirdly, everybody else was like, oh my gosh, so scandalized. And I was like, phew, finally she's doing the stuff she says to me in private, like right out in public. And then she didn't want to see me after that. Once she got down here, she tried to run away from the assisted living home once. And I showed up after the police had already shown up and were sitting down with her and talking to her. And again, she yelled at me that she had disowned me and I didn't belong there. But at this point, I am her responsible adult, so I actually had to be there. And I had to, she went in the police car to the hospital, to the ER. And at the ER, I was the one that had to talk to the nurses and the social workers, who at first came out and were like, we don't see any sign of dementia. And I'm like, yeah, she's really good at masking. Ask her to go follow some directions. They came back 5 minutes later and were like, oh, yeah. Yep, we see it now. And then they basically just put her in non-emergency medical transportation back to assisted living because she wouldn't get into my car. So that was 2 months ago. And I had a really difficult month clearing out her apartment and trying to get rid of all of her stuff. Basically, I didn't want it. We don't have any room for the stuff here by any stretch of the imagination. I wanted to make sure that, like, family heirlooms stayed in the family as much as possible, but nobody else in the family stepped up. I had one cousin that took some stuff, But pretty much everybody else in the family had cut my mom off decades ago, and so everybody was like, yep, sorry, Goodwill. So a lot of stuff went to Goodwill, and we had a yard sale, and I'm gonna try to sell a couple things on eBay that are actually really nice things. I don't think I'm gonna get much money off of them, but I don't know, maybe something to make up for the cost of all of that moving, because the moving was really expensive, and I have no real income to speak of. Like, in a good month, I make $500 in a month. I don't have to worry about rent because I'm here taking care of the kids and helping support, but I don't have any income really of my own. So, and also, in case you're like, so why aren't they paying you? Yeah, my son and daughter-in-law are like working as hard as they can, and we're all just kind of making it by the skin of our teeth. 6 children, one of which with very high needs. Part of the reason that I need to be here is to support this one kid who we've tried to get childcare for, but everybody who has said that they had the capacity, he's been there for a few hours, and they've been like, nope, actually we can't take care of this kid. Which is really sad, because he's a really nice kid. He's a pretty, in some ways, very ordinary 7-year-old who likes practical jokes and has a sense of humor and enjoys watching shows on TV, but he's nonverbal, and his biggest stim is making a lot of noise, which people are just not prepared for. They're not prepared for bop, 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 bop for, 8 hours in the day. So, but he's a good kid, like, really. Anyway, so that's why I'm here. and why I don't have a whole lot of income. And so trying to do all of this stuff for my mom has been difficult on the whole family. And so in the last 2 months, she has tanked. Just the progression of her dementia has gone a lot further than it was 2 months ago. So last week, a week ago Wednesday, she went into her doctor's. The assisted care took her to the doctor's because she was really jaundiced, and they figured out that her body was destroying her red blood cells, and so they sent her to the ER. She ended up getting blood transfusion, and she's been in the hospital until today. They just released her today. They don't know why her body is destroying her red blood cells. She does have a problem with her heart, and she's got 2 artificial heart valves. They thought that maybe the heart valves were causing the problem, but they did scans, and they did like a transesophageal scan and looked at her heart, and that's not the problem. They really don't know what's going on right now. So, if her body's basically kind of destroying itself at this point, there's, probably not a lot of time left. What the doctors told me was that basically every couple of weeks they're going to have to check her hemoglobin numbers again and give her infusions every time she drops below a certain number. So that's where she is. And simultaneously, she stopped knowing who I was. So that was the good news, is that I thought that I wasn't going to be able to visit her in the hospital, and that she was just going to be all by herself in the hospital. And I was really worried about that. I hate the idea of somebody just being alone in the hospital. And I can't be there for every single human on the planet. If I could, trust me, I would. But at least I can be there for my mom. And if she would let me. So I called up the hospital and I asked them to ask her if I could come visit. And they asked her, and she said she didn't know who the they were talking about. So then they brought the phone to her, and I said, "Hey, Mom, is it okay if I come visit?" And she was like, "Yeah, please come visit. I really want to see you." So I was like, "Okay, great." So I get over there, and the in the first couple of hours, she was like, "They said my daughter wanted to see me. You're not my daughter. You're my son." And I was like, "Whoa, what?" So that was cool. It was like, yeah, I know, but like I thought you would be confused, and and she was like, "No, of course not. Why would I be confused?" And then, like, I don't know, maybe an hour later, she started telling people that I was her brother. Also, she started telling me about how her mom had dropped her off at that horrible place where she was staying and had just dumped her there because she wanted to get rid of her. And I just listened. I didn't try to correct her or anything. And she kept asking, like, where am I gonna live? I'm really worried because I have to get out of here and I don't know where I'm gonna live. And I was like, well, you have a place. You have a place where they're taking care of you. And she's like, no, that place is terrible. But then later she'd talk about the place and she'd be like, they're really, really nice ladies. It's just I don't belong there because I can take care of myself. I should be in my apartment. But they got rid of my apartment and I don't have any place to go, so I have to go back there. And I don't know what to do. It's like, but you need somebody to take care of you because you can't handle your medications. She's like, that's bullshit. I can take care of myself. So that's day 1 in the hospital. By day 2 in the hospital, she definitely did not know who I was. She just thought I was her brother. And she kept talking about our mom. And she kept telling stories about me. But instead of saying that I had done the things, she kept attributing these stories to her mom, which is actually really fascinating to me. It just kind of like opened my head to like, oh, my difficult relationship with my mom is in large part because my whole life she has been projecting her difficulties with her mom onto me. Wow. Like, so many things just make sense now. And I had known for a long time that she had projected her brother onto my brother because even while my brother was still alive, she used to call him John all the time instead of David. And then she'd be like, oh, I mean. And then after he died, she would talk about her brother did this, her brother did that. And then she'd correct herself. But, like, she was still cognizant enough to correct herself back then. It would just be like a Freudian slip kind of thing. But on the 3rd day she was in the hospital, we were talking about things, and I mentioned my brother. And she's like, you don't have a brother? I was like, yeah, I do. David. My brother David. He's your son. So at this point, I wasn't, like, I'm not trying to pretend to be her brother. It's just she's calling me her brother. But when I'm talking to her, I'm acknowledging that she's my mom, kind of seeing where things fit, right? So I'm like, yeah, he's your son David. She's like, I never had a son named David. I don't know what you're talking about. It's kind of like, oh, okay. And then, the conversations continued. So on the 4th day, was it the 4th day? No, I think it was the 5th day. The 5th, oh yeah, it was last night, actually. It was last night when I came into the hospital. I'd been in the hospital earlier in the day, and things had been fine. She's gotten, in the hospital, she got to the point where she was like, everything's boring. This water is boring. This coffee is lukewarm. It's boring. This book they brought, boring. Somebody else brought me this other book. It's boring. Do you want to watch TV? No, it's all boring. So, so there was a lot of conversations about how everything was boring, right? But then in the evening last night when I came into the hospital, almost the first thing out of her mouth was, "I'm dying." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And she said, "Did they tell you that, or did you just figure it out yourself?" I said, "I figured it out on my own." She's like, "Yeah, I don't want to die." It's like, "Yeah, I know. So what do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And she's like, "I don't know. I want to travel and spend time with my family and go to birthday parties." And then she switched and started talking about how she couldn't do those things because all of her family was dead. Like a lot of people that don't want to talk to her anymore, she has now decided that they're just dead. And I was like, "Yeah, but Noe and the kids, like you can see the great grandkids and things like that." And she was like, "Yeah, I can do that, but they don't want to see me anymore," which is ironic because they're like the only family that actually wants to see her. Whatever. So then I like redirect. "So what about the travel?" She's like, I can't travel anymore. I'm too sick. I can't travel." And I was like, "Yeah, that is kind of a bummer. But you did get to travel a lot." So then I started asking her about trips that I knew that she'd taken to see if she remembered any of them. And, it took a little poking, but she did. She remembered going to Korea. She remembered going to Japan when I was a kid. I didn't go on those trips. But she remembered them, and she retold the stories as if I had gone with her, which was interesting. I'm not sure who she thought I was while she was telling these stories and saying, "We did this and we did that, and do you remember this and do you remember that?" You just kind of go with the flow when somebody's got dementia, because for the most part, you don't correct them because that will just, make them upset or scared or worried, right? So you just kind of go with the flow, right? And so she remembered that. And then she remembered going to Mexico when my big brother was little. And going to Canada when I was 3. Yeah, I was 3. My mom, my dad, and I got into a 66 VW Bug. So I was 3 years old, so this is 1975. It was the early summer. We get into the 66 VW Bug with a roof rack on the top, just filled to the gunnels. We drove north up into Canada, drove all the way across Canada, then drove south back into the U.S., and drove all the way across the U.S. It was an amazing trip, and I actually can't believe how much of that trip I remember. Like, I have my own memories of meeting a Mountie for the first time, and I have memories of building campfires and things like that, which is really amazing. It tells you how, like, important those kinds of big things you do with little kids can be in a person's life. Anyway, so she talked about that trip, and that was kind of cool. And then she was tired and had to go to sleep, so she went to sleep, and I came home. And today I went to go visit her before they had released her from the hospital. I brought the 2.5-year-old granddaughter with me, and she was super cute. She was very excited to be in the hospital. I don't know how she knew that you're supposed to be quiet in the hospital, but when I talked a little too loud, she turned around to me and she went, "Shh." But we went into my mom's hospital room, and she did that little 2-year-old shy thing where she like hid behind my back, and I had to pick her up and bring her over to say hi to Grandma. And I brought a couple of cookies, homemade cookies that my daughter-in-law made last night. Yeah, I think it was last night she made them. Brought brought out some cookies, offered my mom one. She didn't want one. But my granddaughter took hers and then sat on my lap in the chair in the room, and we talked with my mom for a while. And she was much more animated when she had a chocolate chip cookie in her hand. And yeah, it's weird because my mom never acknowledged any of the harm that she caused anybody in the family. Not just me, like any of the harm she caused at all. She never acknowledged it. Such a contrast to my dad, who, along the course of his life, as he learned and grew, he did take responsibility for things that he had messed up when he was younger. He apologized to me over a decade ago for some of the stuff that he did when I was in my teens and early 20s that were pretty messed up. But he apologized and actually tried to, not just do better, but to make up for some of those things. And, we always kind of had a rough relationship, but there was always this, I don't know, like I knew that he was always learning and always trying to grow. And even at the end, when the cancer was in his brain and he was having a lot more trouble remembering things, his attitude to stuff was like, well, I forgot that. I'm going to have to read a book and learn it again. And he was literally, until he stopped being conscious, he was reading books and very interested in continuing to engage. And the contrast between him and my mom really disengaged more than 2 years ago, before the pandemic even. She disengaged, more and more and more, until the point where now, like when she went into the assisted living 2 months ago, her only social contact was with me every 2 weeks and with her home health care worker a couple of times a week. That was it. That was her only social contact. Well, that and grocery shopping. She'd go grocery shopping and she'd hug everybody in the grocery store. She was just known for her hugs, which was kind of problematic during the pandemic, like the worst parts of the pandemic. The pandemic is not over, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so my mom can't acknowledge any of that stuff now because she doesn't remember it. It's, it's like the culpability no longer exists because it's as if the person who exists right now didn't do any of that stuff, because she has no connection to the person that was back then. I mean, she might have snippets of connection to that person, but not really. And that's a weird experience to be like walking through, because literally less than a month ago I had come to this peace for the first time in my life. I've spent decades of my life trying to be good by forgiving, even though she wasn't taking account of her own actions, and trying to maintain this relationship with her in a way that I could keep myself safe but still have some relationship with her. Kibud av v'em, honor your mother and father. And then, over this Elul and High Holiday period, kind of came to the realization while really reading Hilchot Tshuva by Rambam that if somebody doesn't acknowledge that they did something wrong, you don't have to forgive them. And there was like this huge thing that sort of lifted off my chest and shoulders. Like, I don't have to forgive my mom. Like, it is possible to do the right thing as a child and also be like, nah, that was messed up and you haven't done you haven't taken account and you haven't fixed it. That's no. That and so to go from that recognition that I could just let go of the need to forgive and move past that and just be like, I can process it in a different way that doesn't have to be forgiveness, to now, like, my mom can't even recognize what she's done. And so now it's a totally different equation. Just a totally different equation. And an interesting thing to navigate. Anyway, so back to the thing about my mom realizing that she's dying. Last night, after she had said that she was dying and that she's scared, I was just kind of listening to her, letting her talk, and she said, "Have you ever done this before?" And at first I didn't really realize, I didn't know what she was asking me. And then she said a couple of other things, and then she asked me again, "Have you ever done this before?" And I realized that what she meant was, had I ever taken care of somebody as they were dying? And I said, yeah, I have. Because I have a few times now. And she was like, "I never have, and I don't know what to do." Which, I mean, that's amazingly sad that she does not remember that she was there for her stepfather, who was such a major person in her life. And she took care of him. He did hospice at home. And she was there right by his side when he passed away. And one of the things that she told me about that experience, he was a merchant marine captain. And on his last day before he died, he was like trying to get out of bed, and he was calling out to all of his old friends and crewmates and getting them or giving them orders to get things ready for the ship to go out to sea. And then he, like, once he'd gone through this whole process of getting everybody ready and getting the boat ready to go to sea, he calmed down, and then he just relaxed and was ready to pass away. And he was not cognizant at all about the real world going on around him. But that had been a really deep experience for my mom, and she doesn't remember that at all now. And she doesn't remember her past experiences of, near-death experiences. So she really feels like she's coming at this from a complete blank slate. She feels like she has no connection to this process. And so it's extra scary for her. She doesn't have any frameworks to hang things on. And it's interesting because I thought that maybe, like, religious frameworks would help her. And while on the one hand, she'll tell anybody who walks in the room and tries to bring a Bible or something like that, "I'm Jewish. I don't do that stuff," right? But when you actually offer, would you like me to say a Misha Berach for you? Would you like me to sit here and read Psalms or something like that? She's like, no, I don't want that. No, I don't need that. And so, like, she doesn't seem to have anything that she wants to hold on to for comfort, and she doesn't have these memories for comfort. And that's really sad. It's really scary for her, I'm sure. And I don't really know how to make that easier on her. Anyway, so that's what I'm going through right now. And it's, walking with anybody through terminal illness is always a combination of many different things, but I think personally that there it is a privilege to be able to walk with somebody through terminal illness, to be able to be there for them and hold their hand and support them in the same way as it's a privilege to be a doula when somebody's giving birth. They're very different processes in many ways, but there's also some things that are very similar about them. And I've done both now. And in a lot of ways, other people are saying this must be so hard for you. And my sort of conscious awareness of this experience is not that it's hard for me, not in the way that other people seem to expect it to be hard for me. It's hard work because it's a lot of emotional labor, but it's not like this, like I'm so sad or I'm grieving already or something like that. It's kind of the opposite of grieving, because as opposed to some of the other experiences where I'm helping somebody who's, not family, with the exception of my dad, of course. I'm helping my mom this time, and she's actually completely accidentally, completely without any intention, giving me a lot of insight into her psyche and her life and the areas that she wasn't able to heal in herself that I have been working during my life to try to heal in myself. And I know that there's a lot of things that I have not healed in myself that my kids will have to continue doing that work, because that's kind of the nature of being human. But yeah, this is a kind of gift, and I'm glad for that gift. I'm sorry for her that she is in a situation where she does not have the tools, the memories, the anything to soothe herself or support herself through this process. And I'm just going to continue to try to be there for her as much as I can. And we'll see. Like I started this whole thing out, my mom is a lich. She is undead. You can't kill her. It is entirely possible that a week from now, her heart's going to be doing just fine. Her body's going to have stopped killing off her blood cells. She's going to get like another wind. It's not even the second wind. This is like the 12th wind. Who the heck knows, right? And she'll just be like, getting on with life, doing things. I mean, it's not like she's going to travel or anything, but who knows? Maybe she'll make another quilt. Who knows? It's so hard to tell. And for all of those of you who are like, oh, you're just in denial. No, you don't understand. We have been this close with my mom so many times. So I'm certainly not wishing anything on my mom at all, any one way, except that she shouldn't suffer. I don't want her to suffer. And it's sad to me that she is suffering as much as she is, because she believes that people have abandoned her, because she believes that people have died who haven't died. I mean, I guess it's a nice thing that she doesn't know that some of the people who have died, because we found out that her brother actually passed away in 2018. She hadn't had any contact with him at all in a couple of decades, so that was a surprise. I am feeling a bit of grief for the fact that we've completely lost contact with that part of the family. But, it is what it is. I'll give you an update again soon, I hope. I'll try to be good about it. Part of me wants to do like a whole comedy routine about all the weird shit that little kids and elderly people with dementia say. Not to make fun of people, but just to this is life, man. We say stupid stuff, hilarious stuff. And if we can't laugh at ourselves and at this, then then what? We just have to be miserable about the fact that these things happen? No. I hope that when I am old and have dementia and have completely lost my mind, that I hope, number one, that I'm with people that I feel like I can trust. And I hope, number two, that I keep my sense of humor. And number three, I hope that I continue to have compassion for myself and others in the process. Instead of being angry at everybody all the time, I hope that I can go out with a full heart. Those are my hopes for myself. And, and in as much as I can provide a supportive environment for other people to have the things that they want in those, later days, last days, that I think that's a win. Yep. All right. So that's what's up. Take care.